My name is Jamal Binder, and I'm the chair of the group called MORE, Moving Omaha for Race Equity. And we deal with issues dealing with anti-racism and social justice. And our mission also talks about accountability and transparency. And today we have a special show in a sense. I was going to be co-hosting with Cheryl Weston, who also has a program called Host of Conversation with Cheryl Weston, and she brings a lot of information to our community. And so, as a matter of fact, Cheryl is the one who brought me and introduced me to Anthony Rogers-Wright and said, hey, let's do something related to some of the challenges we face in our community dealing with police community relations and so on. And I just want to start off a little bit and give kind of a little format. We're going to kind of interview Anthony Wright Rogers for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for folks to make comments, ask questions of him. Our ideal is to stay within abbreviated time of a question or comment, and we also want to make sure there's ample time for as many people to raise questions or comments regarding the topic of the recent issues in our community related to the Omaha Police Department and law enforcement. There's been an increase in racial traumas in the community of colors inflicted by the Omaha Police Department. Many have noticed the whitewashing by the media before investigations are done. We've heard Don Klein, the county attorney, come out and make some statements before an investigation was done and so on. The Justice Department has been meeting with folks in the community, and some of the so-called civil rights organizations have hosted a number of secret meetings. Some meetings have been invitation only, and it appears to be a buffer in the sense of not dealing with many of these issues related to our community. We know that these recent incidents that happened in the past year involved 2 murders or killings of 2 Latinos or Chicanos, and of course 2 African Americans under questionable circumstances, and we are concerned about that. We will explore this issue of toxic racism in the department and also the dog whistles that are embedded with the hegemony of white supremacy practice in Douglas County and the city of Omaha justice system. We can see the results of that looking at our prison and jail system, where there's a disproportionate number of people of color in those systems. As I said earlier, there's been a series of killings by the Omaha Police Department, and there's a documented history in this community, in this city, about police officers shooting people, and particularly unarmed African Americans and people of color. We have questioned that, and we've also questioned the lack of their professionalism in dealing with our community. We've invited Anthony Rogers-Wright to talk about those issues in our community, and also he works as an international climate and racial justice advocate. He's also a policy coordinator and analyst with the Black Alliance for Peace and the Black Hive. I don't know a little about what those are about, so we normally start off by asking Anthony to say a little bit about him. Before I do that, I would like to Cheryl to say a little bit more about herself, because I just basically talked about her as a co-host, and she may want to say a little bit before we get to Anthony. Cheryl, would you like to say a little bit about your program and who you are as a co-host here? Cheryl?
Mute. Thanks, Jamal, for putting this together and making it happen. And thanks for Anthony for participating. Most people who know me, and if you don't, you can go to YouTube, Conversations with Cheryl Weston. We try to deal with the information that's given that isn't usually presented by the mainstream media. We try to bring that information out. We talk about the city council meetings, which one today was hilarious, and try to bring information that our community, when I say our community, I'm talking about mainly North and South Omaha, and mainly, I should say, North, but it's really, when it affects one community, it's going to affect all communities. It's just in different ways. So we try to bring that out. We also talk to people outside of Omaha because, like I said, we're trying to get information to Omaha that isn't presented in the same perspective as the mainstream media. And so with that, I'm going to just say again, thank you both. And go to Conversations with Cheryl Weston, and we will, once Jamal sends me the recording of this, we'll put it on there as well and go from there. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Anthony, you look like you're on mute. Anthony, the first question, you're on mute. So I'm like, okay, the first question I ask you is, can you share a little bit briefly about who you are, and then we move right into the questions and go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate appreciate the invitation. It was great to see my amazing elder and partner in crime, Miss Cheryl, earlier today at the city council meeting where we were giving them hell for their mismanagement, their climate denialism, and their promotion of the domestic colonialism in the form of a police state here in our great city of Omaha. Myself, Anthony Karifa Rogers-Wright, I'm the proud son of two African immigrants, Dr. Muhammad Samura and my amazing mother, Dr. Marianne Rogers-Wright. We are from Sierra Leone in West Africa. I've been, I don't like to say organizing because I think that word is used too freely, justice seeking in Omaha for since 2017 when I first got here. Started an organization with my dear friend Graham Christensen, my dear brother, I should say, called Regenerate Nebraska. I also worked on the Cara Eastman One campaign. My background, originally born in DC. I like to say my life began when my mother and I moved to New York City. That's my hometown, Wu-Tang. My background is mainly in climate and environmental justice, as well as racial justice. I am the Fannie Lou Hamer Vision Fellow with the Movement for Black Lives and a proud member and policy coordinator with the Black Alliance for Peace, started by my mentor, the great Ajamu Baraka, an international human rights justice seeker himself. He's located in Colombia, but he's known all around the world, and I'm blessed to have his tutorage. And here in Omaha, I tick off a lot of people, but also do try to build with some of the amazing radical Black formations and Black leaders like yourself, Ajamal, Miss Cheryl, and all of our comrades over at Black Alliance for Peace. Definitely want to give a shout out to our dear brothers, Big Sherman Wells, and of course, Capital Q, Qasim Shabazz. I would say that I got a little more notoriety last year. I did work proudly for Dr. Cornel West as a presidential candidate. And we brought him here to North Omaha, which was the biggest and I believe the only presidential event in North Omaha. It was packed. It was beautiful. Black, brown, white, indigenous, poor folk all coming together. And I'm really glad to be here to talk about this very, very important issue in a city that I have grown to love. As many times as I've tried to leave, Omaha has become sort of like a black hole for me. It just keeps pulling me back. And I think that there's a lot of work we can do here. And if we do come together as Black, brown, indigenous.
And then we have to get to the questions.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm from
okay?
Brooklyn. Don't cut me off. Yes,
yeah. I just wanted to get the brief introduction. First question is: we saw your recent comments in the media about the farcical meeting that the League of United Latino American Citizens hosted at the Kroc Center. You raised some questions and used the term Negro or appointed and so on. And many were perplexed by some of the things that went from that meeting. I know we have different folks that have different points of view. What was the significance of that meeting from your perspective as a community person who's looking at this issue from a different perspective?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I mean, I think the significance of the meeting is also the key takeaway that this meeting had nothing to do with democracy and even less to do with transparent public participation. Ironically, due to the format of the meeting, which was very, very closed doors, many of us got there, including my dear brother Lavelle, who does amazing work in the indigenous community and indigenous youth here in Omaha. We and our dear sister Cami Watkins, who should be on the city council right now, were told when we got there that we were not allowed in to the meeting. And what I took particular umbrage with was on the flyer that our friends from LULAC released. There was a gentleman, Pastor Rollerson, who I don't know personally, so I just want to say that from off the bat. He was listed as representing the African American community, and as I said to KETV, a clip that went pretty viral. Like, I consider myself very electorally inclined and a participant in electoral elections, that I don't remember there ever being an election for the King of the Negroes of Omaha. And the idea that anyone would take part in a meeting claiming to represent an entire community was disrespectful and very, very dangerous. Black people are not a monolith. No one speaks for the entire Black community, not any of us. And therefore, it's clear that this meeting was a sham. And the fact that the pastor apparently signed a confidentiality agreement and a non-disclosure agreement, how is that a community meeting then? And I think that what really compounds what we were dealing with, there was like a little window to look into the room where the meeting was being held, they were putting up pieces of paper and taping them so that we couldn't even look in. And so I think that there is no significance to it, except yet again, some of us were handpicked to speak for us, and they're not even going to be reporting back to us because they signed a community, non-disclosure agreement, and that just has to stop. I mean, this is literally what I would refer to as the praxis of colonization, picking a few and maybe them I don't know for sure, giving them scraps of financial largesse and whatnot, but they don't speak for the people, and making deals that then the Omaha Police Department can say, oh, we spoke to the Black people, we spoke to the indigenous people, we spoke to the Latino, Hispanic people. No, you spoke to the person who claims to be representing those folk. This is not a real process, and it must be rejected. And I hope that Pastor Rawlinson will open himself up to questions, because if he's not willing to be called in, then we're going to have to, unfortunately, have no other resort but to call him out.
Cheryl, you want to say something at this point, Cheryl? Switch
Yes,
back
I
and forth with
do.
you.
Thanks, Ashma. This is one of it points out to what I've said many times before, and we are the only community in Omaha that has to have a designated leader.
Right.
There is nowhere else in Omaha. You don't hear about individuals out west. When there's a city councilman, you have them referred to as city council person or whatever company they work for in that position. But anything to do with North Omaha, and then there's parts of South Omaha, the same thing is done, is they always say it was the North or South Omaha leaders. Who said they are the leaders? As you stated, Anthony, there are more than just one individuals who are minority, whether they be in the indigenous or Black or brown. We don't get to claim who our leaders are. And that's because, as you'll get into more, Ajima, is that fake elite representation of our people.
Question is, during the past months, there's been two Latinos who the police officers killed or shot, multiple bullets. Within the last 6 months, there's been two African Americans who were killed in questionable circumstances. One was in his place of residence and was shot by a rogue cop. Another suspect was running from the police and he was shot. And there's, again, the media puts out a certain vignette of what happened, but it's not always true and investigated well. What is going on with these Keystone cops' behavior, and how can we deal with such a situation from a community perspective beside the mediation clown show, Anthony?
Yeah, yes, I really appreciate the question, brother. First and foremost, it's important for people to understand the origins of modern day policing in the United States, or the present day United States of America. We must understand that the origins of modern day policing, these were slave patrols, right, that were set up in the present day Carolinas, North and South Carolina in the 1700s. We also know that police origins include setting the stage for the expansion of Anglo-settler colonialism through the wanton and brutal land theft of indigenous peoples via terrorism and concerted genocide. That is the origins of the police. In a more contemporary lens, police were, of course, utilized to uphold and enforce laws rooted in white supremacy ideology, Jim and Jane Crow, and prevent, I should say, a unification of multiracial ethnic power of working class and poor people. And this unification always represented the unification of poor and working class people of all races and ethnicities represents a clear and present danger to the bourgeois capitalist land and business owners who the police primarily served to maintain the capitalist status quo of the state. And this understanding, in turn, must lead to a community-wide rejection of speciously named activities like mediation and so-called community policing or better trained police. First of all, what I would say is, like, when I use the term community policing, I'm thinking about our communities coming together to police each other and to keep each other safe. And also, community policing means the community gets to police the police. Today, Ms. Cheryl and I were down at City Hall. Former Mayor Fahy was in attendance. everyone has to remember that it was Mayor Fahey who removed the independent auditor of police misconduct. This is over 18 years now, I believe. He removed that back in 2006. So that's what's happening, is that there is no accountability. And we have seen, you mentioned Mr. Klein, I don't even like to use his name, who essentially not only allows police to enjoy qualified impunity more than qualified immunity, but also what we saw with the lyncher of James Scurlock, and I won't use the name of that coward on this show, but or this program, but the police also deputized him to take Black lives, and that we got to be clear about that, right? This guy, when he escaped to Oregon, had police escorts to the airport because of Mr. Klein. So what we're seeing right now, again, is we have to really reignite the discussions that we were having back in 2020. Because what happened, unfortunately, I wrote a piece, I'll send it to you, Ajmal, called No Whites After Labor Day, because except for some of our white comrades who are on this call with us right now, like after Labor Day in the summer of 2020, it was like nothing ever happened. And it allowed the police, who are simply not afraid of community people, to continue this program of dehumanizing Black, brown, and indigenous people, and therefore taking our lives with impunity. As long as that continues, we are essentially going to be at war with the people who are supposed to be keeping us safe, but they're not keeping us safe. And that's why I reject the idea of community policing or more policing. I don't believe in more policing. I believe in more accountable policing. And at a time when more money is being dedicated by our city council to new helicopters, because they can't seem to keep these helicopters in the air, they keep crashing them, or surveillance programs that are used by a genocidal white supremacist.
And then I'm going to follow with some more questions. I don't want to get into a monologue.
I just want to finish this. This is important that the city council just voted to give more surveillance of a surveillance program that is used by the ethno-Israeli state that is currently committing genocide and ethnic cleansing pogroms. So that is the problem. We're not seen as human. They have too much power, and we have none to hold them accountable.
Cheryl, I'll let you go here, Cheryl.
I was just going to add, this is a perfect example again of the misconduct when we talk about the two Latinos who were killed. One bullet, one shot was fired from them, and multiple shots was fired by the police department. And I believe in later on, we could be corrected, but it was like, I believe 20 plus. We had a Black man who stepped out of his apartment door or home door, whatever you want to say, apartment or house, and he was killed automatically. And all he had on him was his shorts. And you have a rogue officer if you go and hear the first recording until they doctored it, he says something like, oh, so which it meant was, oops, I messed up. Then you turn right around and there's the video online that shows Mr. Phipps, who is jumping over a fence, is shot down on the ground 8 times. What do you say if that's not misconduct? But guess what? And we haven't heard any more about the officer who Chief Schmatter said should be fired. That's gone quiet, because you know what it is? Anytime it's North and South Omaha, Black and brown, guess what? Give them 2 weeks, it's over with.
You know, one thing that hits me, and one of the things that, again, when we get into the discussion from other participants, they need their points of view for us to have a little banter and conversation. But in this mediation stuff, one of the things that came before that was there was a group of clergy or so-called community leaders that was having some kind of a session called how do you get training when you're stopped by a cop? Now, again, that's the most bogus type stuff. They've been doing that for years, and most of us know that. We got that conversation when we were little kids. We live in a racist society about how we're treated differently as people of color. So my question is, do we really need training about what to do when you're stopped by a cop? I assume the cops are speaking in the language we understand. So that's my question to you, Anthony.
Yeah, I have to say straight up that the whole notion of that training is extremely insulting, unacceptable, and unbecoming of anyone who purports to stand for civil rights and Black liberation. more than any other race and ethnicity, save our indigenous comrades, our Black elders have had what is known as the talk, literally the talk. Everybody knows this. My mother had it with me. My uncles had it with me of how to deal with when you are pulled over by police and law enforcement officials. So this idea that like we haven't been doing that for decades, if not an entire century, is disgusting and insulting. And moreover, it makes it seem like we're the problem, that it falls on us when we know Brother Philando Castile was doing everything that he was taught and was shot dead in front of his stepdaughter. So I just have to reject that. But what it makes me think of is what the great Robert L. Allen said in his amazing book, Black Awakening in Capitalist America. He said, quote, but colonialism does make for some class divisions within the ranks of the colonized. In fact, colonial rule is predicated upon an alliance between the occupying power, in this case the cops, and indigenous forces, not just indigenous people, but the local people of the community of conservatism and tradition. And he ends, and I'll end with saying this, hence, although colonialism is defined as direct rule of one group by another, it does nonetheless involve a measure of collaboration between the colonists and certain strata of the indigenous people. In this case, indigenous people being our clergy who are just acting fecklessly. I mean, that training is disgusting. The thing, I see our dear brother Big Sherm on the screen right now, that Big Sherm hasn't spoken to his kids about what to do when we are pulled over. Our hearts stop when we see those lights behind us because we know it's a 50-50 chance of life or death. It's not on us that we're not the ones with the guns when we get pulled over. Okay. So I really, it's very, very unfortunate that happened. And I really hope we don't find out that certain members of the clergy got some stipends to hold that performative training session.
Sure.
And I want to add one quick thing there, Ajmal, is that, as he said, I don't think there's probably a Black father alive that hasn't had the talk with their son. And it used to be you had to have that talk with your son. But now it's just if you got kids, period, and you know what? You even have it yourself. You have that feeling. What if? Because I don't know which one I'm going to get. The thing that, is so disturbing is, as you said, it is not ours. It is not our fault. They should be one having those. Why isn't there training? You see all these grants that come through the justice. When I go to city council meeting, they get grant after grant after grant after training. And then you have these fake, and I'm going to keep on saying it, and I know they're going to find out and listen to it, but that's what they are. These fake designated representatives for Black folks here in Omaha. They keep getting this money to have these so-called training. Why don't you train the police department? Why don't you give them? You got people in the mayor's office that's supposed to be there for equality and DEI. Why aren't they doing the training to give that? Not us. It's not on our back. It's on their back.
As you say that, and I want to deviate, Keith Station is the guy who's supposed to be doing something called racial diversity and dealing with some of these issues. He works directly for the mayor and the other folks out there, but I've asked him on 2 or 3 different occasions for reports and data, haven't got a response. And my issue is that these are the kind of things that they need to be about if they're going to help us in our community. I got another question I want to raise here, and I guess it's a question related to many of us are disappointed with the local civil rights organizations, where we want to talk about Latino Center of the Midlands, or the Urban League of Nebraska, the NAACP. They're basically apologists for the system, and you can ask them how many legislative issues have they addressed, have they been present in a lot of these community meetings, and I don't put a lot of pressure on NAACP because they're a volunteer organization. The Urban League really need to be abolished. I mean, they really are more compared to some other stuff. But my question is, can these out of sync organizations ever regain their place like they used to do when they did some semblance of social justice, not only national level, Anthony, but even locally? So my point is, can they ever be reformed? Because you look at the leadership, the board, it's obvious many of them are incompetent and don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, this is a nuanced question, right? Because I can't speak to every single local chapter of the NAACP, and that's what I'm going to focus on of their national formation. We are also taught by the likes of Stokely Carmichael Kwame Toure, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Ida B. Wells, and Fannie Lou Hamer, that what occurred after the murders of El Haj Malik and Brother Martin was that there was much more of a shift to a more radical thought process, especially with young Black folk. The idea that you killed the peacekeeper, you killed the radical, and you even killed the white boy that was RFK Senior, not Junior, who was kind of like coming more in line with them. And this is when the nonprofit industrial complex essentially was hatched, really in a plan to subdue the more radical elements of the Black community and instead bring in who I would refer to as the accommodationists. Okay, and so what I would say is that one of the first myopias with these groups is that they align with a political party. Cheryl may disagree with me here, but I'm specifically speaking about the Democrat Party. The NAACP is ostensibly a C3 organization, but they of course are very much aligned with the Democrat Party. We see the same with many of our Latino Hispanic organizations, even some of our indigenous organizations, and even some of our poor white organizations. And I think that what happens with the nonprofit industrial complex is that it is a form of domestic colonialism. Essentially, they colonize and pick out and handpick the ones that they can buy, the charismatic leaders, who therefore suppress radical elements of Black, brown, indigenous, and poor white folk. I say it many, many times, Ajamal, that if there was nonprofits in the age of John Brown, he may not have been as radical as we know him all to be. Of course, Malcolm and Haj Malik said, my standard for white activism is John Brown. So unfortunately, there's a term that my dear brother Olafemi Taiwo, who's a brilliant scholar at Georgetown University from Nigeria, coined called elite capture. And what has happened to many, unfortunately, and again, I'm not going to speak to local chapters, I don't know enough about them, I take my cues from you and Ms. Cheryl, that they have been elite captured, okay, by this sort of nonprofit money, scraps from the Buffett Foundation, the Whites Foundation, et cetera, and even the Empowerment Network, and therefore are afraid to be more radical in the fear and the consequence of being defunded. This is why Brother Malcolm didn't mess with that. This is why Black Alliance for Peace doesn't mess with that, and this is why Black Agenda Alliance doesn't mess with
Anthony,
that.
I'm very particular about...
Real quick, I'll end here, is because no one is going to have their strings pulled by who I like to refer to as the Alabaster Puppet Masters.
Right. I'm going to switch over to the participants exactly at the time, but I want to ask you one last question before we move on to folks. And again, we continue some of this dialogue there, feedback, and also the people out in the audience, participants, will get a chance to engage you. But on the national level, the FBI has been historically corrupt and a racist institution. And again, I found out recently in the media that they were involved in the January 6th. They had 20 informers in that system who's working from and were committing some of the very crimes. And also, if you look at the FBI, they're involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. Many question if they had something to do with Martin Luther King's death. Again, when you got people like Hoover and so on. And my question is, I know that our local FBI, I went in their building once in my life. I've never seen them do anything in the Black community in my lifetime and so on. So my question is, what credibility does the department have in the Black community, considering its apartheid hiring practice and so on? And I'm talking specifically about the FBI, and then some maybe you want to capitulate or talk about a little bit more the Justice Department. But I want to, if you can answer that real briefly, and then I'm going to switch over to the audience so that we stay within that time frame.
Yes, sir. It's hard to be brief, so I'm going to try my best.
I'll cut you off. Don't worry. Just keep going.
Yeah,
I'm really serious about that's cool. You can bring some of this information back up when we get to the other part. Okay.
Yes, sir. COINTELPRO. That's all you need to know about the FBI. And J. Edgar Hoover's obsession with the so-called Black Messiah. We know for a fact that the FBI assassinated Chairman Fred Hampton at 21 years old because he was successful at bringing Black, brown, indigenous, Asian, and poor white people together, the original Rainbow Coalition of Chicago. We know for a fact that the FBI flooded our community with heroin. They flooded our community with crack cocaine and did everything that they could do to break up the Black and also indigenous communities with their infiltration. This is exactly why the daughters of Haj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, are currently suing the so-called Federal Bureau of Investigations. But what they really are is to maintain the status quo of the state through colonization and infiltration, turning Black and brown people and indigenous people against each other to the point where we were even killing each other over false information. The FBI's legacy is a legacy of white supremacy, colonization, and patriarchy. That's all I have to say.
Good, good. No, we're right up on that
Jamal,
time.
just one quick point before you go to the questions, and I don't have a problem. He's so right on that, but I do want to correct. No, I am not a Democrat, and I don't agree with the I don't align with the Democratic Party. I am independent, informed. But what he's saying is, if you look at all of the ones that were assassinated, who died, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert King, any of those, when they got to the point where they were bringing all people together, they were killed.
Right. One last point, and I think it's for the record. The FBI did pay the family of Fred Hampton $1 million, so they admit their situation by handing out $1 million. But again, they did not clean up the bad cops. And again, we had a collaboration between the Chicago, what do you call it, the Chicago Police Department and the FBI when they raided and shot him when he was laying in the bed. So that's one of the records that's out there for that. But we've had a number of people who want to raise questions and issues. So my role here is to refrain from talking as much as to let people talk. Elsa, I saw your hand up, and I want you to get a chance to raise questions, comments, rebuttal, whatever you want to do. Elsa, and she's also at LULAC. Elsa, can you hear us?
Hold on. I apologize. My dog is barking. I don't know if you heard her, so
You sound kind of faint also.
Oh, can you hear me?
I hear you now. I hear you clear. Go ahead.
I'm on my laptop. So, I'm sorry that you cannot see my face. I have tried everything on my phone and on the Zoom so that, I could be live facing you. I am here, and thank you for inviting me, Ajamal. I am here to listen and to learn, but I'm going to have to address some of the comments that Anthony made because they are incorrect. Okay. And maybe you are speaking, and I understand the passion, I understand the anger, I understand the rage, I understand all of it very well. I see, is this Sherman Lamont, Mr. Sherman Wells? Yes? Okay. You do not know me, sir, but you were one of the names that were being considered for representation. And I don't know if you were ever made aware of that. I'm going to leave it up to all of you if you want to listen to our side of the story. It was never any intention, and I apologize again if the dog starts barking. She needs to go outside, but I want to speak here. So let me explain the process, and I will try to be brief. I am always open for questions, approachable, everything. We started this up through LULAC. I'm the state director for LULAC. Back when the Latino men were shot, very clear the Latino community, and I'm speaking only right now about the Latino community, is afraid. They're doubly afraid due to their immigration status or to exactly what you all said, losing grant, losing money, the 501s. I am a 501c4. I do not have any funding from the city. I do not have any funding from the state. I have no funding from any foundation. I have no funding from anybody. We're all volunteers. I am 65 years old. I have been doing this since I was 17 in Laredo, Texas, where I'm from. I'm from a border town. Spent, a lifetime working in the legal field, married, divorced, single parent, and became an activist later in life. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Like I told Dajamal today, I will own up to anything that the community feels that I have mishandled, because at the end of the day, as a state director, the buck stops with me. So back to when it started.
Elsa, I invite you to be able to give feedback on the meeting and so on, and we may have to do a different show if you want to give a history of LULAC, so on. But do you have a rebuttal or a comment to something that Anthony said that was misinformation or something you want to correct on that? Yes. Or maybe do you have a question? But again, I got a number of folks I want to get to this time, so we don't hijack the agenda.
And interject me and interrupt me if I go over. Okay, so we started out with 35 people. Black, Brown, and Indigenous. Juanita Johnson, Councilwoman Johnson, was part of that. She joined LULAC because the mayor and company were, of course, harassing her and all that. And I said, I'm not going to allow the only woman of color in the city council to be attacked. I'm a woman of color, and I invited her to LULAC, and she joined. We started out with people from North Omaha. Cheryl, you've been to our meetings. Sajamal, you came to our meetings. Ben Salazar, one. Yes, ma'am. But my point is, we started out with a big spectrum. We never have said we don't represent other communities other than Latinos. The DOJ, and I understand how you feel about the DOJ, and I don't disagree. I have had many arguments and fights with the current district director, who the following day in that morning called and yelled at me for almost 30 minutes straight. That's okay. So we were told to invite a spectrum of people in the community that have issues. We did. We invited as many as we could, as many as we knew. Anybody is welcome, even now. I'm going to fast forward it. So we never meant to exclude anyone, and I can go into detail at another time because I know we're time limited. That meeting, Anthony, you and I spoke on the messenger with Facebook in Spanish. And habla español, el cabrón. He knows what I said. Anyway, I thought you and I understood each other. So nobody was asking me to leave the meeting. We already knew going in that only the mediators that the DOJ had determined, they didn't determine who the mediators were. The group determined who the mediators were. But honestly and sincerely, at the end of it all, we had one gentleman, which is Pastor Rolishan, who is the only one that stayed and was willing to be forward.
Elsa, let me interject here, and again, I want to move on if I can. But one of the concerns issue is, if you go to the meeting as a community person, you send out a press release, everybody expects you to walk in the room. And so when you go to a community meeting and they don't let you in, it's almost like Black Futures group some while back. They had some meeting and they spoke and rambled for a whole 2 hours and then let people ask a question. Useless organization, useless agenda. And my question is, when people come to their house and so on, and they're invited and you send out a press release, they were expected to participate and not to have someone slam the door on them and say they couldn't get in the door. So our question to you is, even though you're in charge of the meeting, how does the Justice Department bring the carpetbag itself in our community and determine who's our leaders and who can we talk to? Again, right. The question is very specific, and I guess that's what's on the table.
I cannot speak for the DOJ. They are telling us how to react to this.
Well, there goes the problem right there.
I have objected to them vehemently. The city people brought out the cavalry. Two city attorneys.
Wait. Hey, Elsa, help me there. Now, I'm a little slow some days, especially on this day. When you say they brought the cavalry, what was going on? What was going on? Are you trying to tell me something? How many people were there from the police department?
Okay, first of all, they didn't want to tell me who was coming. Okay.
The police department.
They keep that hidden. I found out through a different way. My LULAC national leaders approved the press release. I also approved the press release because I felt that.
No, Elsa, the question is, how many people from the police department was there?
Let me take them off. The chief.
No, just give me a number. Just give me a number.
I'm going to guess 10 to 12.
Okay, got you.
City council, the whole shebang was there. Anthony, you were there.
Okay, that's what I was leading to. It's like,
just he didn't get in. He did not.
Right. No, just real quick. I want to say to my dearest hermana, te honro y aprecio tu trabajo y activismo. Like, absolutely. I didn't even know about the meeting because unless it was due to Elsa. But what I will say is that I think that like my issue is, and I'm not going to speak for Big Sherm. I just know Big Sherm and how much of a community advocate and a transparent community advocate that he is. My issue is, if this was really supposed to be something about mediation, and this is on KETV, this is not my words, the chief, along with a representative LULAC, said confidentiality agreements were signed to allow for more incremental changes, something to that effect. And I'm just saying, yeah, Big Sherm was definitely invited. Again, we'll let him speak for himself. But I don't think, knowing Big Sherm, that it was like, you got to sign a confidentiality agreement, therefore you can't talk to your community about this meeting. I think Big Sherm would have been like, peace, and later, from what I know of this brother. So I guess my question is how can it be a mediation if we're starting in a surreptitious and secretive fashion? Why were pieces of paper? This is KETV. This was Jessica Nunez, like taped up so we couldn't even look in.
I
That
saw.
that just seems shady, right? I mean, it's
I
like,
saw the
It's Slim Shady.
I saw
right,
it.
like if I come home come home and my
Instead of
dog is looking like guilty, that means something got eaten or something bad happened. And the fact that Tony Connor, I'm sorry, he is not the OPOA president anymore, was in that meeting is execrable and unacceptable. He does not speak for Black people. He is one of the most dangerous Black men in America, maybe slightly below Clarence Thomas. And why did
was
he get to be there but not, I mean, like, I can call Big Sherm and he will bring me this is not an advertisement, it takes a hood sweatshirt in 10 minutes. How was he not gotten in touch with? He pays his cell phone bill, and
I
so
gotta interrupt you real quick,
yeah,
Anthony.
please.
You're right on point, and I know Ajmal wants to keep time, but here again, Elsa, this is what I said.
Go ahead.
Your organization allowed it. I remember when I going to school, there were times if this would have happened with Martin Luther King or if it would have been Malcolm X, they would have said no meeting. They hold the strings. They determine. Your organization determined. And I'm going to try to calm down, but this just ticks me off. You allowed it to be determined. I cannot understand if you say Sherman's name came up, but what about it? Sherman just shook his head. He didn't know nothing about it. The point is, how do you folks determine who can represent us? And then you only have one, but you got 10 police officers. You got the Warren, the chief of staff for the Queen Mayor. You have those in your organization. I am not going to buy that because when you are in control, just like this meeting, Ajmal doesn't hesitate to say, hey, wait, I got to interrupt you, Crow. When you are in control and you have a meeting, I do the same on my show. When I say, and I call it, hey, it's my shots. If they weren't going to go along with what you wanted, then what is there any discussion?
Real quick, Najma, I just want to say this real
I
quick.
want
2 seconds.
I want to give hold on. I want to get Elsa a chance because I know folks are coming out, and I want some balance here, folks. Because again, we got time, and also there's some other people who may want to ask questions. So, Anthony, I want to get other people into the conversation.
But this is important.
Okay.
I understood that Latino is not a race. It is an ethnicity. There are more Afro-Latinos in Latin America than African Americans in the present day United States of America. And that's important.
Cálmate con eso. That's not the point here, darling.
So, okay. Elsa, go for it. Elsa, I want you to talk.
I want to address Ms. Weston. Ms. Weston, I am guilty. You are correct. I should have done things different. I was under pressure. I am still under pressure because the cops are scary people. We were told we could even get bombed. That's how secretive it became. That if people found out where we were, yeah, don't. It happened during the MLK days. We were told by the DOJ that if we revealed our locations, et cetera, and I'm not here to rat out the DOJ because call me naive, call me whatever you want, but I am doing my best for the community sincerely. Now, some of you are very passionate, are very outspoken. If you know me, you know that I'm the way too. Bien cabrona. But, I told Ajmal today, this is my first year as state director. I don't want to use any whining or excuses or anything. What I told my chief of staff when he told me that there were people out there that were angry, I said, you need to go over there and talk to them, find out what the concerns are. And Anthony, I am pretty sure I told you that you would not be allowed inside the mediation room. We're trying to keep me out. So is DOJ calling shots? Absolutely. Is the police leaning on them? Absolutely. My national president and I'm going to say it, and I know there's a lot of people here that I don't know. My national president said, I said, the DOJ is doing this, the DOJ is doing that. He said, with all my respect to everybody here, he said, fuck them. LULAC will do.
Hold on with the language now. We're people can watch this across high school, so let's be careful, okay?
Fuck them.
Okay,
So,
go
okay,
ahead.
so let me jump forward. Even some of the people that have been a member of this coalition were not allowed in the room. Only the quote unquote selected mediators. They were selected by the team. Ms. Juanita Johnson was tasked to bring North Omaha leadership. I was tasked to bring, and I called upon everybody that I knew, the Latino community. We had two people from the Native Americans, including former chairman for the Omaha tribe. We had LGBT. They backed out, some of them, not the Indians, but some of the others. So you can see some people are intimidated and don't want to come forward. I had some of my own advisors outside that room because only the quote unquote mediators were supposed to be in the room with them. No media. I disobeyed that. I friggin' called the media. I sent it out to Tammy Watkins and other people because this is an issue that the community needs to be aware of. I don't care what the DOJ is telling. They've been pissed at me for a week now because
Okay.
I call the media. So,
By the way, there's some other comments coming in. I'm going to see if we
all
move
right,
on, Elko.
I will be available if you want to ask me more questions or if you
Okay.
want me to answer to you some more things. I'm more than willing. I am very happy that the crowd was there to send that message to the police and to the city officials. And I am glad that this meeting is taking place because this is a call to action. And
Right,
if
I
you
got
have
you. Thank you.
banging on my table, I am banging on my table.
Got you. Okay. Hey, Alex, I see your comment. I wanted to share that. Do you want to read that or say it yourself? I see that up there. Alex?
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening. I just said there's, and I know Poe's a lawyer and there's various people that are in different, what's up, Sherman? Different, whatever important engaged in different aspects of the legal field process, etc. There has got to be something. And this isn't the first time I've heard about this. It's actually very commonplace in Omaha. Moore did expose on the Omaha plantation system, OPS, where they do the same thing at the school board meetings. City council, OPS, DOJ, to some effect, like all of these entities are funded with tax dollars, right? There has to be something on the book somewhere. It's just going to take somebody that has the chutzpah or the intestinal fortitude to make that declaration. There's got to be something somewhere where people, in order to appear or speak or be heard, have to sign NDAs and confidentiality agreements. That's BS. I mean, it's total garbage, right? If you don't have a working knowledge enough of this oppressive system that continues to downplay us, minimize us, divide and conquer, even on this meeting, the lady's being attacked because she didn't do enough or whatever, but like she's just a cog in the wheel, right? There's got to be something, and there's got to be people that are going to step up and say, you know what, based on my research of ABC and XYZ or statute, blah, 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 you can't do that. You cannot tell people that in order to be heard in public or on a public matter, you can't talk about it or you can't know where it's at. I mean, my comment was there has to be something to address these Gestapo-like tactics. Everybody on this call should be familiar with the Gestapo in Nazi Germany and, other iterations that have manifested throughout history, not just American. You can't do that. You can't say this is a community meeting and have people signing NDAs and confidentiality agreements. Now, I'm just a man on the ground, just a retired street soldier that survived, trying to give back, do better, things like that. Sherman knows me, Lavelle knows me, Poto knows me, Ajamal knows me, right? I'm the union of a white woman and a black and a Native American man, so I'm all mixed up. I can talk about white people, I can talk about black people, I can talk about Native Americans, right? I can do it all because I got all that blood in me. But there's got to be something, and there's got to be somebody who has the wherewithal, the driver's license, the ability to be in Lincoln or Fremont or wherever they hold these top secret meetings. And that's another thing. Why do they always, and I realize where the legislation is at, but why are they always doing this stuff down in Lincoln on a Wednesday at 11 o'clock, knowing that people are at work, ABC, XYZ? But the point I'm trying to make is whoever's the expert, whoever's got the rigidity to like circumvent that, there has to be a way. There's got to be something already on the books. And I'm telling you why I know there has to be something already on the books. Because when AIM, American Indian Movement, or the Panthers, or anybody else that was attacked and deconstructed by COINTELPRO, when they were holding these types of meetings, they weren't able to say no whites allowed, or no city Indians, or no feds, or nothing like that. And that is how they were infiltrated and ultimately brought to destruction, right? Because of snitches and informants and turncoats. So if they can do it to us, we just have to find a way to do it to them. That's kind of what I was going and getting at.
Yeah, I know you want to say something, but before you do that, I've written letters to, it was it Sherry Thomas, who's the deputy chief down there. No response. She was on a 360 meeting showing some data of that. And again, one of my criticisms of the police department, not only through juvenile justice, but adults and so on, is how they hide the data. So if you got these dark-skinned people in high places, how come they're not very prominent in talking about some of the internal racism and race, sexual harassment in their whole system? And again, if you don't have community forums with regular people who at evening hours, you're not going to get to some of this. So, Anthony, why don't you come back to you?
Yeah, no, I think that Comrade Alex hit the nail on the head. And I think that the issue is an issue of language and semantics. Whenever the word community is used, it's never properly reified or defined. Okay, and this brings me to the idea of so-called consent decrees. Everyone knows police consent decrees, they became more prevalent with Joe Biden.
By the way, what is a consent decree? Because I don't know if everybody knows what that means.
I'm going to let you know what that is right now.
What does that mean?
Okay, so they became more prevalent after the enactment of Joe Biden and the Democrat Party and Bill Clinton's crime bill, also known as the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. This is where Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton referred to me and all Black and brown and indigenous babies on this call as irredeemable and super predators, and essentially and rather than repeal the crime bill, rather than repeal it, they came up with this idea of so-called consent decrees. Now, what they essentially are, if the Department of Justice finds reason to believe that a police department is in a crisis with regards to its tactics, it will initiate investigations. And if there is substantial evidence of systemic abuse, the DOJ begins a process of negotiating an agreement, and this is important, with the police department, city officials, and those communities directly impacted by the abuse. Once the
That
agreement
is where we are going.
Well, no, I mean, but my point is, Hermana, is that who are the communities? Who is the community? Because what I'm saying is that the consent decrees have become adulterated because what tends to happen is that they will define the community as people who are either moderate or accommodationist and not bring in people like me. I've always been taught, don't make an important decision unless you speak to at least two people who disagree with you. Now, you've got to have a spectrum of people who might be moderate, but then you got to have Big Sherm, who's not going to take any nonsense. Otherwise, you're not hearing from the full people. And also, what I would say to you is, I can't believe I'm using this white dude as an example, but even Abraham Lincoln's presidential cabinet was full of his political adversaries because he wanted to be seen as someone who was somewhat authentic. And so when you're not defining community, and to Alex's point, why would you sign a non-disclosure agreement and a confidentiality agreement? How are we supposed to find out what was said in that room? Because I'm going to tell you right now, nobody on this call, real quick, I'm going to finish here, sister. No one who is Black on this call trusts Tony Connor. I'm sorry. Nobody trusts Tony Connor. He does not speak for me. He's a bootlicker. I'm sorry, Jamal. Like, he does not, and that's the bottom line. He works for the Alabaster Puppet Masters. So when he gets to be in a room and Sherman doesn't, Kasim doesn't, Kimra Snipes doesn't, or Shamika Simpson doesn't, Miss Cheryl doesn't, you have taken two steps backwards instead of one step forward, because now there is no trust. How are we supposed to continue when trust has already been obliterated?
Hold on, there's a quick question here.
Just a minute, Jamal. Let me clarify here. I did not agree to a confidentiality agreement. Nobody in that team from my end signed one. We were presented with a non-disclosure agreement, one document, one paragraph that said confidentiality in the sessions. There was a signature line. None of us signed it. Okay. And that is what I threw back at the DOJ. Do you have a signed confidentiality agreement? I did not sign anything. And that's where he got pissed off and started yelling at me. Now, I was not in that room, if you recall. I was not there. I invited you, Anthony, and I invited everybody else to show up and be there because I wanted the police and them to see the community there. So I have to operate within the guidelines of LULAC. Let's not forget that. They're not your guidelines. That is the method
Elsa,
that
Elsa,
I have chosen.
Elsa, I need to ask you a question here. It doesn't make sense what you're saying. If these guys, if these guys are that bad, then why are we even talking like this? Why are we even meeting? In other words, why is LULAC's name associated with such a travesty of that? So in other words, if somebody invites me to a marijuana party or smokes a dope and I don't smoke it, I can't be in the room with them. I got to leave. You follow me? Or someone that wants to give me some alcohol and I don't drink. So my question almost to you or any of us is, why are we even entertaining sitting in the room with these people who don't mean us well? But I want to switch up because I think, Alex, you didn't answer something I want to ask. A consent decree, and I always understood it as it had to be implemented from the community. The Justice Department don't come in. Somebody has to, because in Omaha, they had the consent decree to get the racism where they would hire black officers back in the day because they would exclude them because some had smoked some marijuana or whatever. So the government came in, federal government says, you have to do this, this, and this, but the black guardians had to initiate that. So are you saying that the Justice Department created a consent decree and come in when oftentimes looking at them, they're just as corrupt as these police officers? Help me on that, Anthony.
No, I can tell you
What
that.
I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to post this for everybody to see. Please watch it at about the 2:27 mark. This is literally the chief saying we signed confidentiality agreements.
No, the question is the consent decree, isn't that created by the people in the community?
It is created by
No. It is essentially a non-admission of guilt. That's what it is. Basically, what it is probation for the police.
But how does it start? I'm asking, how does it start?
It started by pushing through protests and community, so forth, going and calling in the Justice Department.
Gotcha. That's the question I'm asking.
They decide and they work together, and then the police department will say, okay, we're going to do this, and that. We're not saying we're guilty of any, but this is what we're going to do. And if you go back and check, and I'll send it to you, Ajuman, you can put it online. There is a report out of the Omaha Police Department that was sued by the ACLU in 2021 that focused on the right to protest. And that's online. And if you look on there, for Elsa, there should have been none of this. But in the meeting that I attended and Ajuman, you attended with me, I came away from that meeting right there and then. And that's the reason why I didn't come back. Those two individuals from the Justice Department had made it seem very clear that what they could do and would do and weren't going to be for the community. So I didn't see where I was going to get any benefit out of it. But if you go online and you look at that, why don't you hold them accountable to that? Because you should have the right to have a peaceful protest, and those Justice Department can come in. But I think we're getting away from the point.
What I would say to that, Miss C, is that we still know that there's two separate laws, one for white folk and one for non-white folk.
And we understand
that. Big Sherm has been with families. People climbing fences and getting shot and killed. Meanwhile, January 6th insurrectionists are about to be pardoned, who literally stormed the people's house. So, I think, again, we have to come back to the fact that we know that if it was Black, brown, and indigenous cops killing white kids, unarmed white kids at the same rate, there would be a civil war in this country right now. There's just no doubt about that. And until I don't believe in better trained police or community policing, because the system, it's the system and the symptoms, right, of that system. It's not a few bad cops. It's a system and a symptom that protects bad cops. Big Sherm would tell you, this dude killed somebody who was back on the field 2 weeks later, Sherm? That's insane. Meanwhile, our people are dead. So I guess
and it's only going to get worse because the police on the new administration has said they believe in police immunity. Therefore, it
Right.
does not make any
Folks,
difference.
folks,
They
folks,
want to go
folks, I want to
back.
interrupt if I can, because I don't want it to be a monologue with just the 3 or 4 of us. There are other people here who want to raise a question. And so, folks, forever hold your peace. I like to get other people weigh in on the conversation. Osimo is the moderator. So again, as we
One
say,
last
other
thing.
folks speak some of these issues.
But one last thing, please. I hear you. And what I would like to see from this group and others that are outraged about everything is band together and let's just not talk here and complain and point fingers. Let's do something. Because I have tried to do something. We have tried to do something. Imperfect, not perfect. Whatever you want to throw at me, I'm here to take the licks. Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Elsa? Well, then, can LULAC commit to not endorsing any municipal candidate in 2025 that doesn't have a platform that includes reducing the police budget and reinvesting it in actual crime prevention? Because I guess what I'm afraid of is that LULAC they endorsed Tony Vargas, who was bragging about giving $38 million to the police and also bragging about being a Zionist while there was a genocide going on. So if we're going to do something together, let's do something together. We've got municipal elections coming up. I think all of them should be thrown out in the Omaha City Council. Let's work together and say, you're not getting our endorsement, you're not getting our help unless you commit to reducing the police budget and reinvesting it into programs like what Big Sherm does, Black Agenda Alliance, what Brother Lavelle does with Indigenous folk, and if you're not going to commit to that, then we are going to find a candidate who is. That's how we come together. But what I don't want to do is a repeat of 2020, no whites after Labor Day, because nothing changes. Might as well have never happened because this is still happening. That's my challenge to all the C4s. That's my challenge. If you are not committed to removing qualified immunity, you don't get our vote.
Anthony, let's move on. Other folks on the, and by the way, Big Sherm, I want if I can hear from you, because your name came up more than anybody's name today, and I'm wondering, are you a real person or are you just on this thing? So I want to have other feedback, other reactions. Questions, comment, again, let's be brief, because we only got about 30 minutes left or so on, okay? I do not hear you.
Oh, he's on mute.
Unmute.
Oh, he
Sherman,
disappeared.
unmute. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I was just scrolling over to go back to the unmute part. For one, I was never contacted about nothing that had nothing to do with the Department of Justice. But I'm not surprised because I'm not the type of person that's going to compromise who I am and what I stand for when it comes to North Omaha. Because for me, it's different. North Omaha is not just a place that I live. These are my family members. I'm connected to the largest family here. My family has been here for years. So when you talk about North Omaha, I speak to North Omaha as family. That's it. So none of these people with their fake representation is never going to reach out to somebody like me.
Nope.
Because I'm representing my family. And I'm not going to compromise who I am, my integrity, or what I stand for when it comes to my family. And I'm not going to play no games. And your position or title does not make me respect you. I don't care if it's the Department of Justice, the President of the United States. If you say something wrong that's going against this community, my family, then I'm going to say something to you. Tony Connors would not have wanted me in that room because I've had to check Tony Connors about my family. So that's why I was not invited. And I'm not surprised because I don't conform to these people. I don't give nobody no authority over me based off their position or their money or whatever people assume is power. Power is not in a position. It's with the people.
Sherman, I'm going to ask you a quick question. And I heard through the grapevine, you can clarify this. The brother who was killed in his apartment and so on, there's a press conference. I heard you were behind the scene. You had to negotiate and you had to bring some of those reluctant characters to the table. What is the status of that? Because again, we don't hear that through our fake media who don't report on African Americans or people of color. That's just violence or negative. So what is the status of that? And who would be the best person or entity to inform us on these gaps of these local folks who've been murdered or shot or killed by the police department? So it's a specific question aimed at you, or what do you know, and how come we don't know a little bit more of what's going on in those respective cases?
Are you talking about Cameron Ford?
Right.
Yeah. And what was the question? What did you want to know about
What's
it?
going on? In other words, I don't hear anything about that. Are they getting an attorney? Are they going to city's going to settle out of court? What's going on? Because
Um,
it's obvious there's been some misjustice done there based on just common sense.
I can give you this much information. The family of Cameron Ford has retained a lawyer, which is Ben Crump. Okay.
Okay.
The lawyers that he worked with is having problems with the police department and the city getting all the information, even through FOIA requests, after all of it went to the Department of Justice and was done. I mean, not the Department of Justice, but they did they had that hearing, right? They were supposed to, after the hearing, then get all the information. The lawyers still has not gotten the information. They received a one-page thing from the department from Omaha, the city, about the shooting, which the lawyer told me he's never seen nobody be this reluctant. And here you are dealing with a cabal of people in this town that all work together to cover each other's butt. And no matter what, unless we get outside people to come in here, we're going to be up against this same stuff. Miss Cheryl has seen it. Miss Kelly has seen it. We have seen it so many times that they all work together to cover each other. And here we are, individuals, right? And sometimes we go at each other where we can't unite and become a fist to bust through it. And so, with them working together unspokenly, they don't have to even talk. They know that they're oppressing and making money off of the data that they collect in North Omaha, bro. So with Cameron Ford's case, the issue is we can't even get all the information we need about the shooting at
Wow.
all. And
Wow.
we have people that look like us that's
Thank
assisting
you. Thank
with
you.
that stuff.
Thank you.
Sherman, we can ask for that. And those names, the gentlemen that were shot and killed, the ones in South Omaha, whatever's happened in the past, and the past 3 months things, all of those names are in our list of things to discover. So if you can help us out, if you're willing, I heard you loud and clear that you're your own person, just like Anthony and Ajamal and Cheryl. I understand all of that, but please understand that my only tool, the police don't give a shit about who I am. Or also the city, the mayor. The mayor has already gone through a different source to ask for my endorsement. I'm not giving anybody an endorsement. Exactly what Anthony said. We want these certain things. LULAC is the tool that I have. It's not a perfect tool, but it is the tool. And guess what? I have been arguing and fussing and fighting with the DOJ over certain things. There are certain gatekeepers in the group, none of mine, but I'm not going to name them today because you know them. And your name was suggested. Terrell McKinney suggested it. He was at that meeting, Cheryl, and so did Kimara Snipes. So people know and are aware of what you're doing. I don't know Mr. Alex here. There's a lot of faces that I don't know. Some I've seen before when I've been here. But I'm telling you, LULAC is the only tool that I have. And what I'm asking you, you all are very powerful voices, probably more powerful and knowledgeable about your community because I am not from here. I'm from Texas. I've been here 9 years, Mexicana, and you can't see my face, so I'm sorry about that. But I really, really want to encourage unity here and action collectively. Join us or somehow affiliate with us because I need you.
Okay, let's move on.
Wait, real quick, I just want to say because Hermana Elsa was talking about action, Ajamal. Here's one thing that a lot of people need to understand more about Nebraska and Omaha in general. Now, my hometown is Harlem, New York. I'm
You
proud
know,
of that.
I'm trying to get as many people commenting.
I know,
as goes
Conrad,
out
but
of
this is
monologue.
very
Seriously.
important for action, though.
Well,
What we
I
have
hear you say
here-
it's important, but I'm saying it's equally important for people ask you questions and dialogue. It's not a lecture here. Okay.
It's not a lecture, but I just want people to know that we have the power of the ballot initiative. Ms. Cheryl and I were at City Council today. The former mayor, Fahey, removed the independent auditor. I would say let's come together and pass a ballot initiative to reinstate that independent auditor. That is one thing we can do together. We have the power of the ballot initiative. We don't have to count on City Council or the mayor. We can take the power if we come together. That's all I wanted to say.
Paul, I'm going to call y'all Paul if I can. And Sister Cynthia also alluded to this. OTAC is having some kind of accountability for the candidates and so on. Do you see this as one of the opportunities for the community to help elected officials or people who run for office to hold the police department or law enforcement accountable? So I'm throwing that out based on your comment, Paul, or Sister Cynthia. Comments?
This is Cynthia. I would just say that OTAC is based on
Your bandwidth is not coming through well.
agencies and
Can you
that are
type it out? Your bandwidth is real bad.
yeah.
We're getting a
Maybe
lot
try
of
turning
That's
off
why
your
my
camera.
picture's not there. Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to what the LULAC lady just said about
Elsa.
joining. I'm not joining or partnering with somebody I don't know. I've been in Omaha 48 years, my whole life. And if you have some kind of tool that you think could help us, then it would be best for you to reach out to me. I'm not coming to look for nobody to help me do nothing, because I understand my mission and I understand my purpose on earth. That's what I'm focused on right now. And if anybody think that they can help with that, then that would be fine. But I'm not going out of my way to search for people, especially without some kind of credibility. If you're in the streets, then you would know who, the work that we're already doing. So if you have any concern about what's going on in North Omaha, be in those spaces and be in those places. So like I know Alex, because Alex is a product of North Omaha, and me and Alex have a respect for each other because I know that he knows. So we don't have to talk for years, and I still already know what Alex is about. So if you want to connect with anything that we are doing, the Black Agenda Alliance, Cheryl Weston, even Sid Kelly, you have to be in those spaces and meet us in those places. I'm not coming to search for nobody.
Other feedback, other reaction. We got probably about.
Let me respond to that.
Yes, go ahead.
I get your message, Sherman. I friended you on Facebook because I saw some of your videos and I wanted to pursue connections. I don't know if we're still friends. I know Paul Allen. I know a few people up north, but I don't know a whole bunch of people up north. I mean, I'm being honest about that. Now, where did I come from? Well, I grew up.
Elsa, we only got 12 minutes left. We only got 12 minutes left.
Okay, he needs to understand that I'm from the barrio. Okay.
Well, you can have that conversation off camera. I will come back to you, Anthony, if I can. Anthony, you're the guest. I want you to say a few things here.
And I apologize. I'm also 65 with a walker. So,
okay, Anthony, I want you to come out now.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm going to put a link in the chat for an amazing book written by the dear scholar and sister Elizabeth Hinton called America on Fire. And I just want to read this, like at the end, we need to, she's presenting a new framework for understanding our nation's enduring strife having to do with police. America on Fire is also a warning. Rebellions will surely continue unless police are no longer called on to manage the consequences of dismal conditions beyond their control, and until an oppressive system is finally remade on the principles of justice and equity. And Big Sherm knows, and Sugar and all my other comrades know I like to quote books. I'm just saying, I'm speaking for myself. I don't think that you can reform a system that is rooted in white supremacy and colonization. I don't see how that is possible. And again, I just think that it's going to require, it might not be a political solution. Back in the day, before the nonprofits took out the radicalism from our Black communities, cops got shot back at. I'm not promoting violence here. I'm just saying that that is what happened because we weren't going to allow our babies to be harmed anymore by a white supremacist system, just like white people would do and anybody else would do if they, which they do when they think we're trying to harm their system. So I'm just at a point now where it's sort of like Omaha is at this crossroads. You see brothers like Brother Sherman and elders like Miss Cheryl, not to age you, fam, Comrade Sid, Sugar, Daniel, Brother Lavelle. I don't see how they believe that we're just going to put up with it. I would say this, that after 2020, the racial group that became the newest gun owners the most were Black people. And there's something to that. And so I would just go back to saying this, and this is all I'm going to say is that, like, look, like we have city elections coming up. We really, really have to hold people. I don't want to say even hold people accountable. I don't like that. We have to deny people the chance to represent us if they are not going to do what we want them to do. And if nonprofits aren't going to be on board with us, then we'll find other ways to fund those folks. Bernie Sanders took the nation by storm. He was not funded by any dark money, and he is still talked about as one of the most transformative presidential candidates of all time. We should be able to do that at the local level. And what I would say is that, like, you don't have to depend on NAACP, Urban League, et cetera, et
You
cetera.
depend
But
on,
last
you
thing I'll
never
say
depend
real
on
quick,
it.
Black Agenda Alliance is not a nonprofit. It is a formation. Understand what the difference between that is. These brothers and sisters bought their own land with no foundation money. Let's build off of that so we can really be, speak, and act as we need to in these times that are going to require more radicalism and less accommodationism.
Cheryl, I want to call on you if I can, because I've been a little bit quiet. I want to call back on you. I know you're the co-host, but I want you to say a few things too, because we're getting close to the end.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's attending this presentation. Thanks, Aljamal, for working together.
No, I just wanted you to come. We got about 14 minutes
Okay.
left but I
Here's
just wanted
what I
I want you
say.
to interject something that you've caught in this conversation, this monologue, and so on what we've been doing here.
The conversation that I can get out of this is we as people, if we would come together, we do not realize how much power we have.
Mhm.
If Black, white, indigenous, brown people believe on these same principles, would come together and we go to the ballot box. And as he said, if that ballot box was not so important, why would they keep doing so much to keep us from having that opportunity to use it and we don't exercise it? And if we would come together and say, hey, I may not agree with you and you don't agree with me, but we do agree on this one principle. And when we can ever do that, we can be powerful. We can stop a lot of things that happen to us when we become more self-reliant. When we do those things, as Malcolm X says, when you own it, you control it. When you control it, you can own it. You have the power. As I read on Dr. Eddie Glaude's book, we have the leaders right now, but we're not doing it. We're not exercising. And one of my other, what's her name? Anthony,
Ella Baker.
Ella Baker said, we don't need to have somebody tell us that's our leader. We are the leaders when we're here. See, and I want to bring in something with my comment is part of this problem is President Lyndon B. Johnson said, if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice that you're picking his pockets. Give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. And that's what this administration has done. And as long as we allow them to stay in power, as long as we allow them to keep putting their foot on us, by one thing is that we keep allowing all the nonprofits, which North Omaha has more nonprofits than anywhere in the United States, practically. And then when we keep allowing that to happen and we keep allowing these fake Black representatives designated by the powers that be because they're feeding them money, then we'll never get anywhere. When we can't come together, like Sherman, myself, Anthony, Sid, all of you, Alex, I hope to talk to you because I have not met you, but I want to. Paul, John, Lavelle, Wanda Lewis, all of you, Biden. When we can bring that together, and it's so simple, but you know what? We keep letting the I get involved instead of the we. So that's my comment.
One other point, Cynthia, did you want to say something, or Paul, about the old talk? Because I just see that you say there's house meetings. How would someone find out about that, Cynthia or Paul, to know about house meetings? Because they're going to be working on some events in the community. And I know that you were going to speak to it, Cynthia, but your bandwidth is messed up. Or Paul, can someone talk to that? How would you catch up with somebody from Old Talk? Where are they at? Who are they? And stuff like that.
think Paul is the one because I'm not directly in that part, so involved with the Palestinian rights group. So Paul, thank you for what you put in the
So
chat.
go
But
to their
maybe you can
website
speak
is
to
how you
me.
find that answer. Just go
Yes,
to
I
Omaha.
would. But the quick answer is to go to otalk.org and explore there for the ways that you think you can help. Um, Briefly, OTALK is an organization of organizations, not of individuals. For instance, the organization I'm with that is a member of OTALK is First United Methodist Church. Most of us are congregations that are white and Protestant, and we would love to have more POC and Black participation. At the very least, we do have a general group who are just called Friends of OTOC, and you could get involved through them if you don't have an organization that you can get interested in becoming a member of OTOC. But the best place to start is to just look at our website and see the sort of things that you need to do in order to get organized and in order to find out the sort of thing that we do, such as the candidate accountability sessions that we're talking about in the chat.
Good.
And I
Thank
want to
you.
interject real quick,
Jamal.
Jamal. I used to be involved with OTOC when they first got started. And I'm not aware now that you have the Friends of OTOC, but it was mainly made up of all churches, different congregations. That's how it was originally, and now they've opened it up. But here again, Paul, this is what I'm saying is, as Sherman said, I don't have to seek out to you. Why can't you seek in? Why can't there's representatives from Friends, you're on this call, say, hey, I was on this and this is somewhere we need to communicate with each other, and then let's come together. Because I think a lot of people still are underneath the impression that the only way you can participate with OTOC is by congregation, your church has to be part of that. I just think, again, it's all coming together when you get collaborative. Right now, the officers, which the Omaha Police Department monitors this, they have 24-hour monitoring of programs like Ajamal's Mind, Anthony Sherman's. He's definitely on their radar. They know, they watch this program. So you think you're going to be, and that's one of the reasons why some people don't like to sign on. They will wait until see the broadcast. They're monitoring this. And this is what, again, I go back to. We've got an election coming up. We need to make our voices heard by that ballot. So OTOC is good about having those accountability sessions if they can get the candidate to come and attend. What I'm saying is, again, if we're all here together, come together and let's host them, not just at churches that are off at that are within OTOC, but other places. And then if those candidates don't come, that's a clue. They're not for us.
Got you. Folks, we're down to the last 7 minutes or so, and I want to give Anthony a chance for like maybe 2 minutes to closer, and then I got to close out in terms of
I
what
think
we're
you got
doing.
somebody raising their hand there, Ajmal.
Who
JM.
is-
I want to close out with what the next steps are, because I know you.
Okay. we've been talking for almost 90 minutes, folks. I want to give Anthony a chance to close out, and maybe he can.
Oh no, if JM can be quick, because I like the community to talk. Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Okay. So, Sherm, I've been watching you, brother. You're doing great things. Anthony, I'm just becoming aware of you. I've been grinding in the community for over 50 years. Okay. I'm looking for successors to what I've been doing. I worked my ass off to get a Black person into the city council seat that I thought would be a powerful voice for us, and it turned out she has not been. Okay. So I'm ready to put my power, which I have a lot of power, behind someone who has a voice to become a more powerful voice for us in the city. But we have to be the vanguard. We have to come together and be the vanguard in our community and stop waiting for people to do something for us. As the Black Agenda Alliance has, we have to do for ourselves.
Amen.
Period. We have to come together and do for ourselves. We can't wait around. So I'm ready to align with anyone who wants to do for ourselves now. And so that's what I wanted to say.
I want to connect with JM.
So Anthony, 1 minute or so,
No,
because I really want to close
quick,
out on
I
time.
agree with everything that JM said. I really want people to find out more about the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, which was the original Black Panther Party in Lowndes County, Alabama. They started a local party because they were sick of the Democrats and the Republicans. But I'm just going to close out by saying a few things. One, we cannot confuse unity with solidarity and interdependence. If we continue this idea of unity, that's what leads social movements to schisms, and it's built on suppression of difference. Interdependence and solidarity is not like, Sherm will call me up and shoot me out because of solidarity, right? Not unity. Like, brother, I love you, you are wrong. Sugar, Daniel, whatever. Last thing I want to say is we have to banish the imaginary idea of a revolutionary organization that leads people, and we joyfully accept this idea that it's our duty to be attentive and agile and dancing with history and movement, rather than paving a highway we are sure will bring us revolution, when in reality it just brings us to more highways. Always distinguish between organizations that ask you to join something versus organizations that ask you to do something. There's a big difference with that. And I'll close out. I agree with Miss C. I think voting is a tool, but as Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture teaches us, it's really just a way to organize our people. It's not the ultimate pathway to our liberation, but she is absolutely right. JM is right. Otak is right. Not hold them accountable, but you cannot vote for a lawmaker or a candidate that's like, didn't get their platform from the people. Okay, that's how JM, the current city councilwoman, did get elected, because Black Agenda Alliance put their power behind her. But as Brother Umar, who came here, and I don't agree with everything that Brother Umar said, he said, you got one term to prove that you're serving the people. And if you don't come through in that one term, you're out. So that's all I would say. And I love all of you people. And yeah, look, we don't have to protest as much as we have to defy. There are ways that we can do that. This country wasn't stolen. It didn't become a country because people kept petitioning. Yeah. Says it in the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, we only got 3 minutes left, and I want to close out if I can. And one of the things,
yes, sir.
One last thing. For everybody's consideration, and I'm respectfully submitting this to you. We're seeking a Citizens Advisory Commission to hold the police accountable, made up of across.
Elsa, we have to stop there. One of the things that I try to do is stay within the time zones and so on. So again, as I like to say, I want to be the moderator. Moderating gives me different points of view, but I also want to close out with stuff from more. And again, this is one of those events where this is not our only meeting. There'll be other chances. And one of the challenges that I face with folks when we do things is, somebody said to me one time, when we talk, we sometimes try to put a snake down people's throat when we should be putting a worm. And one of the things that I challenge folks is that sometimes you have to get comprehension and understanding before you get to the next steps. And that's the reason why some of our students and people don't do well, is we bombard them and overload them to think that this is the only time to do that. And so knowledge is sequential, and we have to be very conscious of that. So 3 things I want to say before we close out. And we're at that very time, and I want to close out on time. We're going to have a book discussion at the North Branch Library on the 28th of January from 6 o'clock to 7:30. And it's called, the book we're going to call is The Sum of Us is About Racism. We're co-sponsoring this with Inclusive Communities, ACLU, and the Omaha Public Library. That's a rare thing for the Omaha Public Library to do that. And Amy, who's the director over there, is going to be co-facilitating with me, talking about racism in the public square and different like that. So the book is The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. We invite people to participate. And again, it's one of those events that will not happen until January the 28th, but it gives some of those who are slow readers to do that. The second thing I want to say, and I think Cheryl alluded to it, we were somewhat astonished and shocked at the number of people who watch our program after the fact. A lot of folks get us on Facebook. They're afraid in this community, in a democracy, to have their name on the Zoom and so on. So there are a lot of people who comment to me later, I saw this and that, and I didn't know that they even watch it. And again, some of those are the bourgeois, the elites, the sellout, the people who might call people who are friends of the system. And so we're saying at the end of the day, when we speak truth to power, we can say it regardless of which audience we is and where we're at. And then the last thing is probably the most important, folks. Things are oftentimes defined by what they do. And one of the things that's very difficult is that if you look at our community, and I know Anthony is not from here, he's been here for a while, and other folks, those of us who grew up in this wretched environment, racist, segregated, apartheid, and one of the things we fail to understand, Latinos make about 14% of the city population. African Americans make about 13%. We're significant numbers. If you add the other groups of color, we're almost 1/3. But you would never know that looking at the university, Omaha Public Plantation Schools, elsewhere. And some of the issues, I would argue, folks, if the shoe pinches and we don't pull it off, we suffer the consequences. And at some point, we got to challenge ourselves to be somewhat focused. And again, as has been said by Malcolm X, it's not that other folks are smarter than us, they just better organized than us. And one of the things I think is very important, and I have a hard time dealing with it, Mr. Charlotte Sharpshire said years ago when I was a kid, we get tired of hearing the I writers. It's about we and us. And oftentimes we catch hell, as Malcolm would say, not because of because we belong to a collective group. But at the end of the day, folks, we challenge you through more to push back at systems. I know some people are afraid what's going to happen January the 20th, but as we know so well, those of us who've been in part of the struggle know it's just part, as what Pat Velasquez, one of our board members, said, we have to become part of the resistance. So we hope that you join us. And as they say, we really don't want to be do-nothings, but do something, because what we're working on today is not just for us, but for those children and those grandchildren and folks who are not yet born. So with that notion,
Ajmal, don't forget about the survey.
we do have a survey. I'm glad you mentioned we do have a survey. We like to get input. And also, next year, we're planning a number of events that will bring communities together. Most people don't know we don't have a paid staff. We're just volunteers, and we have a small budget equivalent to maybe the lowest paid person who work at the Urban League, okay? And they probably make double what our budget is. But people are surprised we're volunteers. And again, the fact that we don't have to answer to some people, we get to do what we do, like this event tonight. So we welcome and we appreciate people here today to be here, and we look forward to holding more events. Go on our website, fill out the evaluation, and also suggest other topics and things that we can help facilitate. And as Tony and Anthony knows right now, when you're moderator, you got to control the show, Elsa. And at the end of the day, it's our dime, and we want more people to talk so that we don't get into the smaller. But as we say when we end these programs, may the force be with you. Barocco.